Well, there's another Scream movie coming out. That was fast. And I figured it was high time to take a look at more Scream ripoffs. This is a list of 10 movies that have either taken direct inspiration from the Scream storyline, whether they're just taking the vibe of it, the marketing of it, all of those things that kind of made the Scream phenomenon what it was. And there are plenty of these to talk about. There's enough for me to do like another list when there's another Scream movie, like next year. Number 10. Let's start with 2007's Hack, with an exclamation point on the end, from Smithfield Street Productions, and hey, I see you, Pittsburgh company. It starts with Jason Voorhees himself getting his head chopped off, and then we have Winnie Cooper starting our Scream comparisons by discussing films and the violence of A Clockwork Orange, and a teacher named Mr. Argento. So we're definitely taking a sort of meta, self-referential tone here. And hey, it's Keith. Where's the dolphins? And then, Jesus, this guy was on Scrubs too. And there's a bunch of college kids. And then it's a rocky reunion with Pauline and Duke as those students go on a trip to a small island where, look out, Drusilla is hanging out with Mike Barnes. And you have a group of young, pretty people, some of whom are established faces from TV shows, and they constantly talk in movie references.
Oh, so you guys like scary movies?
So this is clearly showing its influence.
Got me here. Favorite movie?
Oh, best goddamn movie ever made.
Damn straight. And then, geez, they even cram in an uncredited Lachlan Monroe in there. But then, of course, there's a masked killer that shows up and starts killing them off and throws in Yvel as another possible suspect. But this one isn't really a mystery because I think that the identity of the killer is pretty clear from very early on. But the mystery is what's going on. But with the themes of the film and the very blatant concept of killing people in order to emulate movies is very, very Scream. And yeah, it's fine. It's a pretty standard slasher flick from the era and doesn't exactly offer many new surprises, but has a pretty good lineup of people involved, and there's some fun, over-the-top performances. Plus, one or two interesting twists near the ending that aren't that hard to see coming, but they're still entertaining. Number 9. Next up is a movie from 2002 called The Greenskeeper, which gives us a member of the Dead Poets Society, and we're set on a golf course and country club, and he's having troubles with his girlfriend. And he's also a wannabe screenwriter, and it has a bit of an 80s slasher vibe going, with a legend of an old greenskeeper who was mangled at the club and swore revenge. And Alan works at the club, and his dad died, so his mom remarried the guy who runs it. And our killer is wearing this, well, groundskeeper outfit. And of course, everyone gets together to watch a horror movie and throws out some commentary about how horror movies work. And of course, the crew wants to have a party on the club grounds, and Alan has the keys, but does he also have some issues? It throws in the prerequisite movie quote-orama.
You know, wouldn't mind, buttering your muffin.
And then they start getting killed off, with some Prowler references thrown in, and the murders are pretty glorious. And I'm gonna be honest, the Scream comparisons here are the most superficial that we're gonna have, but there's still that sort of meta aspect of we know what we're making fun of here, and not only are we gonna do it, but we're gonna point to it as well. But the difference is, whereas a lot of the Scream era slashers were like, we're doing 80 slashers, but they're now gonna feel like this new thing we're doing. Like the 90s slashers had their own style. This one is like, we're gonna reference those 80s slashers, but this is also gonna feel like one. And here's the weirdest part. It features a small role for controversial baseball player John Rocker, a few years after making some pretty controversial statements in an interview, and right around the time that he made yet another set of comments. And this one's pretty good. It's a pretty good time. It really does feel like a classic slasher flick, even if it's definitely tongue-in-cheek. Number 8. 1 year after that one, there was 2003's Cutthroat Alley. And it's obviously riding that wave since the box cover announced that it was Scream meets Boys in the Hood. Instead of doing the thing where they just shove a bunch of WB stars in there, this has a collection of hip-hop artists like Busy Bone from Bone Thugs and Harmony as the lead Chetty. Mac 10 is in this, and at Chetty's party to celebrate him going off to college, there's some bad blood all around, leading to a brawl. And there's tons of suspects, including Winston here, and the killings are by a guy in a black hooded outfit with a white mask. It's a skull here and not a ghost face, but he's got a big knife. And this movie has the added issue of the killer's attacks seeming like the kickoff to a gang war. And this one was also written and directed by Timothy Wayne Folsom, who made a handful of films, but this was the only one that falls under horror, really, and appears to have been done on a super low budget. And of course, there's lots of red herrings thrown around, and Chetty and Winston have to team up to solve the killings even though they don't trust each other. And this doesn't have a whole meta aspect of the Scream movies, but the mystery aspect feels very much like it. The description of Scream meets Boys in the Hood is pretty perfect because it does feel like an even mixture between those two inspirations. And the problem with having musical acts as your actors is that, well, they're not actors. The ending feels pretty much straight out of its inspiration and isn't terribly hard to figure out, but this is pretty good. It definitely feels like a 90s slasher, but the urban element absolutely gives it a different flavor, even if that flavor is also lifted from another popular movie. Number 7. In that same time frame, there was 2002's RSVP, and take a look at this box art, and you tell me what vibe they wanted to go with. The beginning gives us a murder, and it's a lesson that Professor Doyle is teaching to his students, and this dude is the guy with that weird, sexy dance from School of Rock. And the similarities begin as they start sitting around talking about serial killers and movies and how they're connected, because that's what you do in this era. And Jimmy the Janitor is in this too. And our next horror movie essential occurs in that they're gonna have a big party at a massive house. And were they like we got the angel guy, but we can't get the angel girl. But this is as close to Charisma Carpenter as we can come, so let's just roll with it. Then Mike and Sarah Palmer come strolling in, and there's a whole sequence with everyone dancing to the Madness's One Step Beyond. So you've won me over, RSVP.
To the rockiness, rock steady beats of madness. One step beyond.
It takes a very long time for the killing to start until the 45-minute mark, and there's tons of discussion of gaining fame and notoriety via killing, another Scream parallel, and also an emphasis on humor. But it's not really a mystery, as the killer's identity is never hidden, and that's probably this one's biggest weakness, is that the villain, I think, is supposed to be the charming, roguish killer, but is just sort of more douchey than anything else. Luckily, the cast seems to bounce off each other pretty well, and that's lucky because so much of this one is just them in a room goofing around with each other. And here's the thing, based on the marketing and the sort of snarky dialogue, it feels like a Scream ripoff even if there's not a ton of plot similarities. But on the other hand, it shares a lot in common with Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, and even name checks the real life killers that one is based on as well. It's decent and has some good stuff going on, but there's maybe a touch too much filler. The saddest part about this one is that it was Glenn Quinn's final film, as he would take his own life a little later in 2002. Number 6. Okay, I put this one off long enough. I'm talking about 2012's Smiley, a more recent entry here. It starts with the urban legend of Smiley. You start a video chat with someone and type, oh Lord. I did it for the LOLs 3 times, and then Smiley appears, and he's a dude who has stitched his eyes shut and carved himself a smile. And oh, subtle movie. and starts chatting with a stranger who says he has to kill her now, and she gets so freaked out that she logs off. And like, have you ever been on one of those Omegle-like things? That's like the tamest thing I've ever seen someone say to someone on there. The lulls thing gets typed and Smiley kills her, and then there's Ashley here, and she has a new roommate, and she's meeting dudes off of 4chan, so clearly makes good life choices. And oh my god, the dubbing here.
Kind of a dork in high school. Oh, but you're in college now. I can do whatever I want. Yeah.
And then they meet Zane at a party.
No, I enjoy The Strange because it's interesting and often retarded. That's kind of my special research area, the intersection of the strange and retarded.
Like, they handed actors these lines and said, say these. And they looked at them and had to say, okay. There's also this guy that I guess is a YouTube guy, and I know this hairstyle was a thing, but was it really in 2012? So yeah, they go home and try it, and it works. And again, I think I need to reiterate, the way to activate this killer is to just randomly find a person online and type in "I did it for the lulz" 3 times. That's it. And the makers of this film very, very much gave too much of the benefit of the doubt to the internet here, because if word of this ever leaked out, even as an urban legend thing, that's all anyone would do. Ever. It would be mass death on a daily basis. It would be races to see who could type it faster. So, the Scream comparisons come in with the notion that Smiley's not actually supernatural and he's a real guy, so they start to throw the suspicion everywhere. And of course, the very Screamish looking poster art, and okay, let's talk about this one. This film is just really hated online. It's got a mere 1.16 on Letterboxd, one of the absolute lowest rated films on the site. Lower than Leprechaun Origins, House of the Dead, and even Verotica. I guess 4chan didn't really like being associated with the film, and people involved with the making of the film had their information posted online with the instructions to harass them. And whether or not this was true or simply a publicity stunt has been questioned, but either way, it's led to a large number of negative reviews online. It's often described as Scream meets Candyman, and that's pretty accurate, but it's also been described as complete and total dog crap, which is also, yeah, accurate. I don't know what the budget is here, but it's decent, and when I say decent, I mean it's less than $1 million or even $500,000, but it's not like a backyard movie or anything. It's got the budget of most Lifetime movies, but there's just something so painfully desperate about it. It's desperate to be hip and cool and trendy, but with stuff that was out of fashion for around several years by that point. Childs pops in around the tail end of this one, along with a really predictable and also really stupid, like really stupid ending. Number 5. We're going back to 2002 for The Frightening from David Ducatu, who also had an entry on my first Scream ripoff list, but he just couldn't stay away from the subject matter, I guess, and has a gang of dudes in shades and skull caps killing a guy in a school. We then meet Corey here, who has nightmares about wrestling, and we get a shot of him in white undies because this is a Dakota film after all. His mom is Brink Stevens, and here's the cover they went with, just in case you weren't sure what they were going for there. But there's not a single killer. It's this group of guys in black, and their actions seem to be covered up by the school. Even this electrocution, which is preceded by long, slow motion soaping up. Corey is courted by several factions in the school, including the popular jock kid who is wearing this hat, you know, a very stereotypical jock hat, right? And the punk kids as well. And first of all, this features a bunch of what Dakota was mainly known for around this time, guys in tidy whities. And secondly, it's not overly Scream-oriented, at least in the film itself. But the poster sure wants to think that it does. And the opening title even matches the first Scream's font before they found their own stylized look. So I guess in the end, if you're looking for something with that 90s slasher vibes, this isn't gonna scratch that itch, although it does try to hit that aesthetic. To make it even less Scream-like, the ending instead swipes from another film that was very popular around this era. One that kinda sounds like The Fixed Fence, if you know what I mean. And it's not bad, it's cheap, and the acting is pretty stiff, and it's not really that well done, but it is entertaining and keeps you guessing enough to be an okay time killer. Number 4. This next one's cheating a bit because it's 1998's I've Been Waiting for You. I say that it's cheating because based on the title and the box art, I think it's more of a knockoff of I Know What You Did Last Summer, but considering that that was only made in the wake of Scream, consider this one like a ripoff once removed. It starts with Elliot and her mother, Christine Sullivan, and they're moving into a new house because, I haven't said this in ages, but moving is the greatest terror. There's a cat here with the most unusual cat scare sounds ever. And then a phone call happens. Welcome home. But wait a minute, the phone lines aren't set up yet. And she starts her new school with Punky Brewster and then meets Angel. And Rosemary's just a great mom.
Hey, I met your daughter today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she's a nice kid. Sweet, smart.
You sure it was my daughter you met?
Christ, lady. The town had a witch burning back in the day, and yes, this has that whole teen horror vibe going for it and uses modestly known TV stars, even though Sarah Chalke hadn't really hit Scrubs level of fame yet, but she was still known for Roseanne, and like Last Summer, this one was also based on a young adult novel, but was a TV movie, and they tell the story of the witch and say that she swore to return for revenge and was also named Sarah. But then there's a masked killer on the prowl, and he's got this mask and Wolverine claws, and this one was definitely keen to cash in on the Scream and Summer buzz because in the novel this was based on, there was no slasher character at all. This was added for this version. But it's a TV movie, so those claws don't get used. And for the large portion of this story, the killer isn't even a major part. It's more about everyone thinking that Sarah is the witch and throwing her into pools and stuff. But it's not bad, it's not great, and it's certainly derivative, but it's worth checking out. Number 3. Another one that came out in 1998 at the height of the Scream boom was Disturbing Behavior, which starts with a John Connor witnessing a guy kill some people and then just get let go. And then Cyclops and Ginger Snaps are moving to Washington. Oh hey, twice in one episode. Moving truly is the greatest terror. His new school has some drama going on, and Final Destination's Todd is here, and strange things seem afoot with the popular kids, but there's also a girl here worth jumping creepily on a couch for. But just looking at her makes these kids' eyes glow and then fly into a rage. But oh, then hey, Steve Railsback is here too, and I'm not sure, but I feel like this might be his biggest budget feature that he appeared in his entire career. I mean, it's no Nuki, but you know, what is? Then the Grim Reaper is here too, and he's obsessed with getting rid of all the rats, like he was Brad Dourif in Graveyard Shift or something. And Pike is here too, so the cast list here is pretty extensive, but it seems like the kids are changing. Gavin says that the clean-cut preppy kids used to be his burnout friends and claims that they've been brainwashed by the town. But what's really going on? Especially when Gavin goes all Cardigan himself. And this was directed by David Nutter, who directed a bunch of TV early in his career, as well as Trancers 4 and 5, before becoming one of the more noted X-Files director, and then just kind of became Mr. Sci-Fi TV guy. And that continues with a pretty celebrated set of episodes of Game of Thrones. And even though the plot here isn't overwhelmingly Scream-oriented, this is another one that's about tone and marketing. It's a hip, trendy high school setting with a bunch of super pretty teens from TV shows, and even though Nutter wanted to make something that was more of an X-Files style sci-fi thriller, the studios wanted a Scream knockoff, as was very apparent through their advertising campaign. It had a pretty disastrous test screening, so they ended up altering the finished product quite a bit, to the point that Nutter considered taking his name off the movie, but ended up not. Although he'd lament how it would turn out, saying that the studio simply wanted to skip the character stuff and get right to the scary bits, cutting it down from 115 minutes to a mere 84. A full version with the half hour of deleted bits doesn't truly seem to exist, although quite a bit of the footage has been released otherwise, and fan edits can be found of what could be considered the director's cut. Number 2. We've got the whole 98 trifecta now with The Curve, or I guess Dead Man's Curve? Again at the height of Scream popularity, and oh hey, featuring Stu himself, Matthew Lillard. The movie starts with talking about that old urban legend about schools giving you an automatic 4.0 if your roommate commits suicide. So these guys seem to be plotting on killing theirs and making it look like a suicide. And Alias Guy is here, as is Felicity, and their target is Rand here. And again, school setting, pretty teens, TV stars, an actual Scream cast member, murder in the air, and this poster. It's pretty obvious why this is considered, if not a ripoff, inspired by Ghostface and his franchise. To take that further, there's even the whole meta let's reference movies things with a recreation of the Deer Hunter's most infamous scene, except with beer cans. And their plan goes into effect and seems to be successful, leading into them using Bella Lugosi is Dead as if that song didn't already have perfect placement in a different movie, and they get the 4.0 from China Beach. And then things start to unravel as tensions rise between the roommates, and blame starts to get thrown around, as it seems as if Tim is trying to throw Chris under the bus as the police close in. It was directed by Dan Rosen, who only did this and one other film in 2012, and it may be because this was met with pretty negative reviews. And when I say that, I mean it has a whopping 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It ended up skipping to theaters and going straight to cable, and it's another one that the plot doesn't really match that closely to Scream, like there's not a masked killer or anything, but it's absolutely clear what their intentions were when they made it. And I can kind of see why the reviews were so negative, considering that it's just kind of boring, and the ending suffers from unnecessary twist overload and a lack of having like any sympathetic characters. But honestly, it's not that bad, like it's not 0% bad, but it's also definitely not good. Number 1. And our number 1 film here is the epic Shh from 2003, which was an Indian take on the subject matter and claims to be inspired by Scream and is also billed as a remake. It starts in a familiar way with a young woman being haunted by a creepy voice, but not on the phone, just from in the balcony, and her boyfriend is killed, and we have our black hooded killer, but instead of a Scream-inspired mask, it's a sort of basic clown who slashes with a knife and gives us that opening kill. The opening credits are surreal. And it's then 6 months later, and the girl from the beginning was Mahek's sister, and she's now being tormented by a mysterious caller. We then have our group of cool kids, and hey, what do you know? There's 5 of them. Whoa, oops, nope. I guess there's 2 more. So see, it's different than Scream, not a remake. A teacher is killed in school, and hey, this is 24 minutes into the movie, and there hasn't been a single musical number, so I don't know how to figure all of this. There's bits that are repeated, like the killer in the house pushing against the door and her running into her man's arms only to immediately suspect him, with him getting arrested. And then, damn it, finally, at 50 damn minutes into the movie, we finally get a musical number at a house party. And when I say 50 minutes, You say, well, that's like, more than halfway through the movie. But oh no, you are wrong, because this film is 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
मोहब्बत में ये क्या नजर आ रहा है?
Yes. And technically, if this were a remake of Scream, this would be the Stu house party and the movie would be nearing its climax. But there's still 1 hour and 48 minutes left, more than the entire runtime of the actual Scream. And there's a distinct point here where this breaks from Scream quite a bit, and billing it as some sort of remake no longer makes sense. Like the whole finale is them heading off to an island where the killer chases them, becoming like some kind of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer ripoff or something. But that being said, if you've seen Scream, yeah, you'll be able to figure out the shocking twist ending of this one. So there you have it, 10 movies that obviously draw some sort of inspiration or just straight up ripping off Scream or the 90s slasher vibes. Yeah, there was quite a bit of good in this one. Actually, I enjoyed quite a bit of these. They were pretty fun. There's some clunkers in here, but for the most part, this was an enjoyable watch through. I kind of like this vibe. Even though the movies are never great, I still think they're kind of fun. Let me know if you've seen these, or let me know other Scream ripoffs that you can think about. Put them down below in the comments. I did do an earlier run of Scream ripoffs that mentions quite a few of the more popular ones, so check that out beforehand as well. Let me know if you enjoyed this video by hitting the like button, and if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button. It's always kind of fun. And if you want to, go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines, where you can help support this channel and keep us going and making great videos for you guys to watch. And guess what? There's another great one coming very soon. I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.